Welcome to MJ Radio. I'm Melinda Joy Pattison, licensed mental health counselor in private psychotherapy practice here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. On this show, we are in the pursuit of raising the collective consciousness. So when you tune in, you will hear interesting conversations with interesting people about interesting things. Today, my lovely guest is my friend and colleague, Mary Kuhn. And Mary is in pastoral work. And I'm so glad to have you with me here today, Mary. And I should have checked with you before we even started to say, I need to say Reverend Mary Kuhn. Or are you Reverend Dr. Mary Kuhn?
Sure. Reverend Dr. will work.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Reverend Dr. Mary Kuhn.
Yeah, I was going to say Mary works just fine.
So, I'm so glad for you to be here with me today. And I've been really looking forward to this conversation. And I mentioned to you that often when a brand new guest comes on my show, because I have repeats a lot, I like to ask, how did you come to do the work that you do?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because I've always, since I was a little girl, was planning on going into ministry. And this was back when they weren't even ordaining women in the Presbyterian Church.
Is that right?
And nobody told me I couldn't do it. So I started out, I just remember at 11 or 12, knowing that that's what I was going to do.
Wow.
So there wasn't any major breakthrough, or I was raised in the church. I remember my preschool nursery teacher from church.
Yes.
And the ministers I've had all along. So it was just something I was going into. It's, of course, evolved over the years.
Right.
What I was going to be a missionary and save the world, until I was a missionary and realized that we needed saving more than the rest of the world did. So then I was going to be a hospital chaplain, and I took a lot of training for hospital chaplaincy and decided that that was not my forte. And then I'm not sure what I decided on next. I know I had said I would never go into parish ministry, and I should have learned by then not to say never, because I fell into parish ministry by a wrong turn, actually, and then just loved it and have been in parish ministry ever since, along with pastoral counseling and marriage and family therapy. So, yeah.
So pastoral counseling was yet another course of study that you did.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And marriage and family therapy, which is an additional hours, of course,
right,
to it. So
okay.
Yeah. So.
And so the marriage and family therapy
and
would have been
teaching at seminary.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, and so the marriage and family therapy was outside of, we would have said it was secular training. Would that be true?
Well, yes. Yeah, a lot of marriage and family therapy is, or was. I was involved with a program in California just recently that is, I don't even know what, spiritually integrated pastoral counseling is what they are. Spiritually integrated counseling. That's kind of a hybrid sort of thing. So that was the Klein Bell Institute in California, where I was affiliated just a few years ago.
Okay. Would you say more about that? About this integration?
Well, they didn't offer a a degree in marriage and family therapy per se. It was really in spiritually integrated counseling, which was all of the psychological benefits of counseling, all those classes, but with the spiritually added as well. And Kleinbell prides itself on being multi-religious. So in my classroom, I had Buddhists and Christians and Jewish folks. And I think I even had a Hindu at one time in the classroom. So it wasn't specifically Christian, but how the spiritual is so integrated into whatever counseling we do.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
How wonderful. I don't know about this Kleinbell Institute.
Kleinbell, Howard Kleinbell is the father of pastoral counseling. I believe he was a professor at Princeton and then at the Claremont School of Theology for decades, and is well known in the pastoral counseling arena. And so this institute was named for him. And it was a counseling, we had our own counseling center, and along with the training program as part of the Claremont School of Theology.
How wonderful. How wonderful.
Yeah,
because I don't really feel like, for myself, and the way that I practice as a psychotherapist is from a spiritual base. So I don't feel like it can be separate for me.
Except you're a spiritual person. Except you're a spiritual person.
Right. And I kind of make that assumption about everyone. Whether they're practicing any kind of spirituality or not. That I am a student and an advocate and a practitioner of something called applied interpersonal neurobiology, which is the integration of body, mind, emotions. And I just put a spiritual in there with that, because that to me is the holistic. That's the holistic view. That is the whole being, and that's who I'm working with, is the whole being. So I have long had concern about pastoral counseling per se, that it was not inclusive of all of the whole being. And and that the clinical part was missing. The clinical part was missing from pastoral counseling. So this is really so great.
Pastoral counseling for me. And pastoral counseling, my pastoral counseling training was heavily psychodynamic, heavily. And the American Association of Pastoral Counseling, which has now been folded into clinical pastoral education, was criticized, long criticized, for being too heavily psychodynamic and too little on the pastoral. So
it has been a controversy. And then what about all those guys, all those individuals? Go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to say spiritually integrated psychotherapy, which I was teaching in Claremont, just continued to help students talk about how the spiritual is involved in their counseling. Because again, it was all the psychodynamic and the psycho books as well. But then we'd also bring in, so how is the spiritual at all? How is what you're doing touching the spiritual life of your client? How does that come out? It's not necessarily talking. It's not necessarily talking it necessarily, but it's making sure that it's included in that therapy room.
Yes. Yeah, it's present there.
Yes. Yeah. It's not ignored.
And so where does spiritual direction come in, and how does that connect or not connect with what you've been trained to do?
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
Marie Joy. Because I get that question a lot, and I'm not a spiritual director, you see. So, as I understand it, spiritual direction really does deal with God in your life and does not deal with psychological issues that may come up. I've had spiritual directors tell me that if there is like a DSM diagnosis, they will refer. They are not trained to deal with mental health issues. They are trained to deal with the spiritual issues, and where you see God in your life, how you see your that's playing out in your life, which is not what I would call therapy.
Right. And yet I have a really hard time separating that all out in my mind and in my work, because of what I've just said to you, that it's all integrated as far as I'm concerned. Yes. And in my practice, and many many psychotherapists who are sort of from the same school that I am are not into diagnosing. I mean, I don't call the people I work with patients. I call them clients. And a lot of the work is about helping them understand that there's not something wrong with them. They need support.
Right.
And so I am not on that shall we say, extreme end of diagnosing. I mean, that happens. I mean, it happens, but I might write that in my notes and never even say it. I might say this is a personality that is, leaning toward something, but not. I feel like those diagnoses kind of are limiting. They're limiting to the work and limiting to the person a lot of times. I mean, sometimes it's absolutely necessary. Sometimes drugs are necessary. Whole nother conversation. Right. Whole nother conversation.
And I'm probably in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I was trained with all the diagnoses. I was trained a long time ago and trained with all those. And I find them very helpful in my mind. Not necessarily anything I talk about with the client, but I find it very helpful in my own mind to kind of know which direction to go. Spiritual directors, as I understand it, are not trained in any of that. Are not trained psychologically as you and I are. And so that's not a put down. It's just they have a more narrow focus.
Yes.
And I've been very much helped by a spiritual director, so I have great respect for them. It's just we're in different. We're on the same road. We're in different lanes.
Yeah. And the question continues to be in my mind is, where is that line for them? Where is that line between what they think needs to go over here in spiritual direction and when they need to refer out? Because that can be it seems awfully murky.
Yeah, and you'd have to ask a spiritual director that question.
Now, wasn't that a nice detour?
I can't answer that. I really
no,
can't.
I know,
I really can't. Yeah, right? Yeah.
But do you wonder about that too? I mean, is it just me?
I do. But I've heard, I've had a lot of clients that have also been in spiritual direction at the same time they're in therapy.
Oh, sure. Yes.
And they don't have any issues with it. They have found both therapy and spiritual direction to be kind of separate but equal.
Yeah. And I have also and do visit with a spiritual director from time to time. Nevertheless, I feel that my psychotherapy work with my therapist is my spiritual work.
Yeah. Well, it's a difference in philosophy, Joy, I think. I mean, I really do think it's
Mm-hmm.
just a difference in philosophy, and probably a difference in the way we're trained, the difference in the way we're raised. All of that stuff comes into
Oh,
play.
right. As I often
Yeah.
say, everything affects everything. So,
Yes.
no, you're right. You're right about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know how. Oh my goodness, I started in one direction and then all of kinds of questions came in.
Well, and I realized,
so
we got the ministry track, so to speak.
we
Yeah.
we what?
We sort of got off the ministry track.
Oh, well,
in
that's
terms of parish ministry, but anyway, yeah.
Right. Well, and so what is it that you love? Let me just ask that question. What is it that you love so much about parish ministry that it's kept you in it for all these years?
And probably the same thing that got me into therapy as well is the people. My role as associate pastor, or my primary job when I was an associate, was youth ministry, which again I swore I'd never do. And I just loved the kids. I just loved them and their families. And did lots of work trips and all that kind of stuff. Just loved it. And then I went from there to Louisville to work with the denomination, and loved that work, but in a very different way. It was very much advocacy work, harder work in a way, involved far more with issues than with people. And so I didn't do that for as long because it really kind of wore me out. I'm a pretty high introvert anyway, and I was traveling all over the country speaking on a variety of topics, and it wore me out a lot faster. So then I ended up being parish associate. Well, yeah, I did other stuff too, but I ended up, and what I'm doing now is parish associate because I love visiting in homes with folks who can't necessarily get out, not necessarily only the elderly, but in the I love hospitals and homes and visiting. So that's what I've ended up doing in retirement.
Did you say that again? That you love hospitals?
I mean, I love visiting in hospitals. Yes, I love visiting in hospitals.
Oh, no, I know. I knew you meant visiting. Yes. But I think that's a unique gift. I think that's a very unique gift to love visiting in hospitals. I do.
Well, and that was part of my training.
I'm so glad
it's
it's
yours.
A lot
of training in that. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I of course haven't been in hospitals in the last few months, but
right. How has this pandemic affected your work?
Well, I've made a lot of phone calls. I've done a lot more phone calling, phone pastoral care, than visiting. But I have visited in some homes where family either asked me to and said they have caregivers that are coming in and out. Just put your mask on and go visit. And so I have done a few of those. I'm doing a few more now. If people have patios, I will go visit and sit on the patio with them. I don't like being inside a home, but I'll do my best if they have a patio. And I've met people out for coffee, which is outside as well. So I've started to do that a little more, although I'm still very cautious because, of course, Santa Fe is the highest now, is having the highest case rate in New Mexico as of the last couple of days. So I'm cautious about that, but
right.
And this is my third or fourth or fifth, I've lost count, retirement as well. So I am doing this in sort of retirement.
I'm so sorry. See, that was mine.
Quite all right. You got one too.
Yeah, and we'll have this part cut out because that was the FedEx guy. What are you gonna do?
Well, that's exciting for your little one.
Oh, she wants him to think she's going to eat his lunch. Right, right. Come on. She's a Chihuahua.
Oh, and she
Right.
thinks she's a Great Dane.
Oh, yes. Yes. If not a wolfhound.
Well, my dogs, I've had a succession of dogs who have gone to my work with me, therapy particularly, been in the therapy office. And I've had
Isn't it
clients
wonderful?
over the years who have said when my dog wasn't with me, do I get a reduction in fee?
That's great.
And I had a client in California, a young woman who was in seminary, who wanted me to take a picture of her with my dog because her mother wanted to meet my dog.
Wanted to meet her therapist.
Yeah, exactly. Wanted to meet her therapist. The one she talked about anyway.
Yeah,
which was
right.
my dog. Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's so great. Yes.
So,
well, I want to go back to the part where you said this is your third retirement. So
at least
the first one was.
Oh, the first one was, wow. The first one was 12 years ago now when I moved into my RV, in which I lived full time for about 6 years. And I worked in campgrounds. I moved into my RV in 2006 and worked at a KOA outside of Louisville in order to learn the computer system for KOA. And then I traveled to Santa Fe first and worked in the KOA south of town.
Well, that doesn't sound like retirement at all.
Well, yeah. I was going to travel all over the country and see all of my friends. And then I discovered that I'm not much of a vagabond because I got involved with First Church here. And then I moved to Tucson to work in a large RV park there and got involved in a church in Tucson, then moved back here. And I thought, oh, I can't keep doing this. I want to be a part of a community. So then I found a campground here that's open year round and got a job at this campground in where I live now. And
okay.
They have a mobile home park for seniors. And that's where I live now. I don't work there anymore. So I retired. I lived here, then I moved to California into a retirement community. And that's when I worked at the Klein Bell Institute. I was also parish associate at the church there as well. And I had my little counseling practice. And I lived there for a while, but California and I didn't really hit it off.
I see.
So then I retired again and moved back here. Moved back to the campground and actually didn't do anything for about half a year, maybe. Something like that. And then I'm parish associate, but very, very, very part-time. And I just have a couple of clients as well. So
I was going to ask you if you have about your counseling practice.
I just have a couple of clients right now that I saw I was here for, wanted to come back. And what I've said is I don't really want to see folks who need long-term counseling. I just don't think I have the energy that takes right now. So, and a couple are seeing me maybe once a month or every 6 weeks or so. And I also have a supervisee back in Louisville. And, we do telephone supervision. She's a therapist back there.
Right. So that didn't have to change at all.
No. So
right.
Very part-time. I really retired better this time, I believe. I think I'm learning as I get older.
And then you went and got that baby dog.
And then I went and got crazy during the pandemic. I had too much time on my hands. apparently, and thought at my age, I either get a puppy now or I forget about it. So,
Oh, yes.
and my older dog is 10. And I thought now's the best time because she'll train him and she'll have a buddy. And it hasn't exactly worked out that way, but we're working on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And say what kind of dogs those are again?
I have standard schnauzers, of
Standard
which there are
schnauzers.
few in Santa Fe, but standard schnauzers, and they're the standard for the breed, but they're the fewest in existence. Lots more
Okay.
mini schnauzers and more giant schnauzers, and
Oh.
fewer standards. So,
And how did you come to how did it happen that became your breed?
I don't know. I really don't remember. I really don't. I had a mini
No?
schnauzer that had an attitude and decided I didn't
Oh.
want another mini. But how, and, yeah. And someone said, oh, you need to get a standard. They're a totally different breed. And I don't really know how I found Carly, who was my first standard. I was living in Louisville and I got her from a breeder in northern Indiana and had to make trips back and forth because part of the contract was for her to be bred. So,
Wow.
but I
So
don't really.
So
Yeah.
how many have you had?
This is my third.
The baby is your third.
The baby is my third. And I've not had a puppy standard schnauzer before.
Oh.
They are German. And I am too. So I figured I could out stubborn any puppy. But he's given me a run for my money, that's for sure.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, that's just that having those dogs, I'm sure, has been a comfort to you during this time when
Yes.
we've been in isolation. I know my pets have been really
Yes.
instrumental in keeping me grounded and kind of, remembering where I am during this
You bet.
pandemic. Yeah.
Well, I've
Yeah.
been out walking every day, and I've gone to the grocery store ever since pandemic started and gone inside. I've just done that. So, yeah, and I've had plenty of lunches out on patios now. I have friends with a dog that live 2 doors down, and we take our dogs to the outdoor patios. So, I'm
That's
doing
great.
plenty of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yes. Outdoors is the ticket.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 I'm
Yeah.
concerned about everybody for whom this has been a real test, because for me, it doesn't feel all that different for me.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
again, being a high introvert, I don't mind being at home all the time, but I know there are plenty of folks out there that are having a real struggle with this. So,
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. My life has not changed that much either. Because my office is in my home. I wasn't going out to do my work anyway. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I'm sure that like me, you've discovered a myriad of ways to do the work because virtually. And before the pandemic, I would have said, I'm not interested in doing online therapy. I'm not interested in that. I need to be in the presence of. That's the work that I've trained to do. That's where I've been heading. But and I don't want to do this, the way we're doing it now exclusively forever. But my understanding of how therapy can work has been greatly expanded by this experience. I mean, let's talk on the phone, let's do Zoom, let's even text. Whatever's going to work for you, whatever makes you feel safe.
Mhm. I,
Mhm.
I have been Skyping for years. I work with our
Sure. Mhm.
young adult volunteers. It's a program of the denomination for young people, and out of Louisville again is headquarters. And we have young adult volunteers all over the world and in the U.S. And I have been anyway one of the, well, for a long time, the only therapist they used when there were uh, issues that couldn't be dealt with otherwise with our young adults wherever they were. And I would use Skype with them and have done that. Then when the pandemic hit, I was asked to become part of the program for all our mission personnel all over the world. And so I've done lots of Zooms with both our young adult volunteers who were pulled out of their countries and were dealing with the trauma for them of being pulled out
Oh, yeah.
on a moment's
Wow.
notice.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So I've done group Zooms with them, but then I've also had Zooms with our mission personnel, different issues, conflict issues, um, next step issues, folks that were pulled out of their country and are trying to figure out what they're going to do next, sort
Sure.
of thing. So I've done quite
Yeah.
a few of those Zooms since the pandemic hit. Not so much now. I think the staff are all on board kind of now with where to go with all of that. But I was doing a lot of that, and I thought, whoa, it really felt like work because
Yeah.
I was doing
Wow. Uh-huh.
3-4 Zooms a day there for a while.
Oh, wow. Well,
So
and so with this program, um is young. So what exactly is the program that these people are in other countries?
yeah, it's a
What is
similar
that all
program to
about?
what I did. I went overseas out of college for 3 years. This program is 1 year with a possible second year, and it's for kids. Most of them, I shouldn't call them kids, it's for young adults who pretty much have graduated college, but I think we've had a few that have just graduated high school even. And they go, they do whatever the place needs them to do. They work in offices, they teach school, they're daycare workers, they're wherever, whatever country they go to. We have sort of like house parents where they go, and there may be 3 or 4 in a group and it's kind of intentional community kind of stuff. Some of them end up living together for a while. It may be just one that goes to someplace, 1 or 2. And we have sites. We've got a site in Albuquerque. We have, I believe, 4 or 5 young adult volunteers in Albuquerque who ended up, I think 1 or 2 may have gone home, but the rest stayed in Albuquerque during the pandemic and continued their work until they couldn't. One was, I know, working with immigrant families, and that was finally kind of shut down the pandemic. So they're all over, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a great program. It's really a great program, and it's not just for Presbyterian young ones.
Oh, okay. So anybody could
Yeah.
actually participate,
So
even though it is through the Presbyterian.
anyone could. It's primarily Presbyterian, but right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So if anyone is interested, Luke Renbold is the staff person in Albuquerque for the young adult volunteers. And he's really on the Presbytery staff and the young adult volunteer himself. I call myself the very first young adult volunteer because I went, oh boy, over 50 years ago.
And where did
Yeah.
you go, Mary?
I went to the Philippines. I was down on Mindanao, actually.
Wow. Wow.
So
Was that your choice? That was really where you wanted to go, or that's just where they sent you?
that's where they sent me. I had to find it on a map when they told me that we were going to the Philippines. It was like, I was a very naive college graduate, very, very naive. So had no idea where it was. But it was a wonderful
Wow.
experience.
And how long did
And
you do that?
obviously, 3 years.
3 years.
And that was back before smartphones and Zoom and Skype. That was when you had to put a stamp on an envelope and wait for it to happen. Yeah. So
People do that anymore?
really, really. Yeah. So, but it was a great, great experience. And I think that's why I'm still involved with mission folks.
Well, sure.
I did
Yeah.
mental health assessments for all our mission personnel for years when I was in Louisville. So yeah, I've had a very, very rich ministry. I've been really blessed with that. I've just, when I look back at everything I've done, I am amazed at the variety.
Yeah.
I served 2 churches when I was in college. Who does that? You know, all my friends were out the road drinking, and I'm writing a sermon in college.
In college. So
Weird.
yeah. Well, different. Yeah.
Different.
So and what a gift to know from such an early age that that's where you were headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I had a very conservative pastor at the time, which also blows my mind, because I told him I was going to be a minister, and he kind of went, "Oh, okay." Instead of saying, "Good luck with that." It was like, "Oh, okay." I mean, he didn't encourage me, but he didn't discourage me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of amazing.
It really is. I mean, I entered this field, psychotherapy, it's not my first career, at a much later time. And it's looking back that I'm able to say, this is where I've always been headed. But I certainly didn't know it when I was 11, you know. So yeah. I think that's really, really extraordinary and quite wonderful. And so you went from high school directly to college, where?
Muskingum. Never heard of it. It's a Presbyterian college in southeastern Ohio.
Okay. And then did you go directly to seminary?
No, I went to the Philippines.
Then you went to the Philippines. Okay.
And then
did you go? And where did you go to seminary?
Louisville Presbyterian Seminary.
Louisville Seminary. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I got my doctorate at Columbia Seminary in Atlanta, because that's where I went from seminary to be trained for clinical pastoral education, hospital chaplaincy, and ended up being associate pastor of a church there for 14 years. Yeah. So
wow.
I got my DMin while I was at church there.
Yeah. And then, but then you
so
added.
I've lived all over. I've just, yeah.
You have. You have lived all over. And then where did you get your pastoral counseling?
That was also in Atlanta.
Okay. Okay.
I did some of that. There was a pastoral counselor on staff at the hospital where I was training in chaplaincy. And then it was Georgia Association for Pastoral Counseling that I ended up going into a program there, which would have given me, you'll like this, Melinda, it would have given me an STD if I'd stayed in the program.
Well, I sure am glad you didn't do that.
Really, I am too. It's a Doctor of Sacred Theology. It's what it's called. But I just I could not survive what I would call the male chauvinism in that program. And the philosophy at that time was kind of to beat you down and see if you could fight your way up. And I wasn't good at that. So I was in the program for a year and a half, but I just felt like
What is that about?
Oh, that's a long story that you don't need to hear about, really. But
that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
No, it didn't work. So I quit that program and ended up taking courses in marriage and family therapy here and there. And taking enough of what I needed so that AAMFT licensed me.
Okay. That was going to be the next question, where that training happened. Yeah.
I was a fellow, what they called a fellow in the American Association of Pastoral Counseling. I did survive that process, which gave me credentials in pastoral counseling. It was a very tough process too, because it was the same kind of process. And I trust and hope and pray that has all, well, there isn't AAPC anymore, so that process has definitely changed. Anyway, don't go there. So I was licensed with AAMFT, and then we had a program at the seminary in Louisville that I got involved with, which gave a master's in marriage and family therapy through the seminary. And I taught in that program and was also a supervisor in that program for quite a few years as well, which I loved because, again, I love young people, so it was great fun. And two of my supervisees have gone on to direct the program at the seminary. So,
wow, well, that's a testament to you. Your nurturing.
It's a big deal. Yeah, for them, it's just so it's so cool to see them do that.
Well, that's so great. Well, this may be another conversation for another day, Mary, but you have shared that you entered into ministry before it was, women were encouraged to do such a thing. And I'm sure it hasn't been an easy road. I'm sure you've met with patriarchal, BS here and there along the way.
Here and there.
Here and there. And you have just been determined to sidestep it, not allow yourself, not allow yourself to be bullied, for sure.
The church in Atlanta, where I was associate pastor and where I was ordained, actually it was a different job that I got ordained for. I was working as an alcohol and drug counselor at the same time that I got this job at the church. I was the first woman ordained in that presbytery. This was a fairly conservative church. I mean, I was doing radical things even then. I was on a national committee. I was put on a national committee for women's advocacy work. The people were wonderful. They were extremely accepting. There was one family who did not believe that women should preach. And so my colleague, who was extremely open, my colleague would let them know when I was preaching so that they could stay home. And I was all for that. I thought, I don't need a heckler in the congregation. Thank you very much.
Right.
But they were very, very supportive of me. My send-off after 14 years was phenomenal. It was really amazing. And I had people, when I was on this very liberal national committee, folks would say to me, we really don't want to know what you're doing, but we're very proud of you. So And I knew they meant it. They didn't agree with my perspective, but they were proud that I was involved in that way. So,
Uh-huh. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. And your family, your parents, did they just bring you up to believe that you could do anything, that you could conquer the world?
Not really. I mean, they
No?
didn't discourage me. My dad wanted me to get a teacher certificate when I went to college. And I kept saying, I'm going to be a minister. He said, well, you need something to fall back on. And I said,
Like if you were going to be an artist or something.
He didn't think it was going to happen. And I took college. In high school, I took shorthand and typing. So in college, I spent summers working as a secretary. I was a Kelly girl.
Yeah.
And so I said, I don't need to get a teacher certificate. I can be a secretary. No, you don't want to be a secretary. You want to be. I said, I'm not going to get a teacher certificate. And what I actually got was a certificate in Christian education. So when I graduated from college, I could have gotten a job in any church as a Christian educator. That was my fallback.
Uh-huh.
But my folks were very conservative. They didn't know half of what I was involved in and didn't want to know. And if they found out something, so they were proud of me, like these folks in Atlanta were, a lot of them. They were proud of me for accomplishing stuff, but they didn't really agree with a lot of what I was doing.
So did you have an awareness of what was happening with Angela Davis?
Oh, yeah. My dad, I was in the Philippines. I believe I was in the Philippines when that happened. And my dad said he was going to quit the church because of that. And I said, well, why don't you just go to Canada then? Because he was against all those Vietnam War objectors going to Kansas, or going to Kansas, going to Canada. And
right.
so I said to him, why don't you just go to Canada? And all the rest of them. Because he was thoroughly opposed. One of them who helped ordain me was one of the African American folks who chipped in money to pay back the church because it got so much heat. He was one of the ones, who, because they collected a fund, all the money the church gave to her was reimbursed after all the hoopla. So, and my brothers are very conservative. I have brothers that I'm not close to because we're so far apart in age, and they're extremely conservative and bigoted. So we don't have a lot.
Right. How many brothers do you have?
Clarissa? 2. Do you know Clarissa Pinkola Estes, the author?
I know of her, and in fact, I just pulled out The Women Who Run with Wolves. I just pulled that book out to put in my stack to read.
Oh, it's wonderful.
That's what I've heard so many times.
One of her stories is about the stork who's flying a basket of zygotes across the sky to drop them into their future homes. And there's one little zygote that's so excited that jumps out of the basket and falls into this house and doesn't fit in at all, and figures that she must have dropped into the wrong house. That's what I always figured. I dropped into the wrong house.
Well, then we're in the same club, Mary.
Aha!
We're in the same club.
Wow.
I was having that conversation with my brother just this weekend. That very conversation.
Wow.
Isn't that something? Yeah. Yeah. And I thought I was the only one.
Yeah. I've just always, it's like, yeah, my parents are gone, of course, and my oldest brother is pretty feeble. I'm amazed actually that he's still alive. And my middle brother was the military guy. And
so you came along after. You're the
yes,
youngest.
I'm 11 years younger.
Oh yeah, right. Well, that's a
Mm-hmm.
whole different family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And my brothers were out of the house when I was born. My middle brother, I was with him maybe until I was 5, and then he flew the coop. So I didn't know either one of them, and I still don't really.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it was like you were an only child, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And my parents were much older.
Yes.
And so I found another family, and I adopted them, and it was a wonderful family. And their daughter is what I call my sister. Their older daughter are still very close, and they became my family. And my parents never understood it because I was always at their house.
Oh, of course.
Right. And they didn't like it. They didn't understand it, but
it helped you survive.
It did. It did.
Yes. Wow. Oh, Mary, this is so much fun. This is so much fun. I to get to learn so much all about you, because we sat down once before.
Yes.
And had over coffee. Had a lovely conversation that time. But I feel like I know a lot more about you today. And for my guests. Yeah. This is just so much fun.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, when I hear myself talk about everything I've done, I feel like I must be 100.
But you are definitely not.
I think, geez, I must be 100. It feels like I've lived several lifetimes.
Well, I'm glad you're still into things, into so many
Me
things.
Too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I have to ask you this question before we go. What do you not miss from before the pandemic? You said your life hasn't changed much.
Really?
And I'm right there with you. But there are some things I miss that I don't miss. There are things I don't miss from my life before. Because I think as a spiritual topic, that this is a really prime opportunity for people to be introspective about what it is that maybe they don't need to put back in their life.
Well, something that's always been hard for me, and the pandemic certainly shone a light on it, is making it so busy. Just feeling like you have to do.
Right, right.
I think a lot of us don't really know how to be. And so I still don't be very well, but the pandemic has slowed me down in a way. When I watch church online, it's all I can do not to move that bubble across and, and have a 40-minute service that only lasts maybe 10, because I just move the hymns and the songs and the prelude and it's hard for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I think I probably have had adult ADD, and so that's taught me a little bit on how to just sit and be.
Wow.
That it's okay, because I don't have anywhere I have to be or need to be.
Right. That's a big one.
So that's probably what I don't miss, is filling my calendar. Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
What don't you miss, Melinda Joy?
Well, it has to do with places and things that I was committing myself to doing regularly, and then they couldn't happen because of the pandemic, because we got shut down. And I
Mm.
realized after some weeks and months that I wasn't missing them at all. And so life going forward looks quite different in that way. It looks more different going forward than it sort of feels like I mean, it doesn't feel like it changed that much, but it really looks very different going forward, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well, and
I'm always
the challenge for me at this point is to remain, not to remain, I don't know what the word is, to be more positive in age and its time, because I can become depressed and angry very quickly. And so I think that's not good for me or my health or anybody else. How do I stay somewhat positive in a time that is pretty depressing, and
yeah.
the social justice needs to happen. So
Right.
that's been a real challenge for me, is how to not always just be snarky and nasty and all of that.
Right. Well, I've not experienced that.
How to laugh.
Oh, laugh more. Yeah. And I was going to say, I've not experienced any snarkiness from you. So
you won't, but there have been others who have, including my dogs. Unfortunately, they probably get the brunt of my snarkiness.
Well, so that brings me to a final question, I think, for today. Is what do you do? What do you do to take care of yourself in that way, that self-care, so that you can do this work of giving support to other people?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm in a painting class and have been for years.
How wonderful.
And will never be a good painter, but I continue to take class because that's about the only time I paint. It's when I have to, because there's a part of me that enjoys it when I actually see a picture that I've painted, and I like every painting. It's like, oh, I like that. So I do that, and then I'm in a ukulele group. So I play the ukulele.
Wow. I had no idea about either one of those things. That's
and
great.
I'm in a singing group that sings at hospitals and nursing homes when we're able to get into those places.
Right.
So,
right. And which group is that, Mary, here in town?
It's called Your Song. There are chapters all around the country and particularly around the world as well. It's a group of women who kind of divide ourselves up and sing in different nursing homes and the hospitals here.
Oh, that's super.
So
that's super, yeah.
And that's been really good too. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So,
well.
Yeah. And I've sung where there have been church members, so that's kind of an added bonus to that.
Right. That's lovely. That's so lovely. Yeah. Music is therapeutic in a very deep way, I think. Yeah.
I play, actually, Melinda Joy, I play the banjo uke.
I never heard
of it. Which you've probably never heard of.
No, I never heard of it.
The banjo ukulele.
Yeah. I'm going to have to Google that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, right?
It's cool. I enjoy it.
It sounds cool. It sounds cool. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for letting me take your time. This has been
Well, thank you.
really,
Yeah,
it's
thank you.
been really wonderful. And perhaps we can do it again on another day, because we brought up a lot of things that we could pick at some more. We could talk some more about a lot of things, I think.
Probably.
And so, yeah,
Probably.
so we'll bring this episode to a close. My friends out there listening all over and watching all over the world, thanks for joining us today on MJ Radio. We'll see you next time.